Something has been haunting me since I was just 9 years old, and today, at 34, I still get chills every time I think about it. My name is Marcus, and what I'm about to tell you is something I've carried with me for decades, buried deep in my memory like a dark secret that should never have been uncovered. You know that creepy feeling of being watched through a window? That inexplicable certainty that invisible eyes are fixed on you, even when you should be completely alone? Well, I experienced it in a way that completely destroyed my peace of mind and turned something as simple as a window into my greatest source of terror. When I was a child, I lived with my parents in a narrow, long house in Baltimore, Maryland, squeezed between two practically identical buildings. It was one of those old East Coast neighborhoods where the houses were built so close together that you could practically touch the neighbor's wall if you stretched your arm out the window. My room was on the third floor, right at the top of the house, and it had a window that looked directly onto the building behind ours. The distance between the two structures was ridiculously small, maybe 6 or 7 meters at most, which meant I could see clearly into the room that was exactly opposite mine. For a long time, that room on the other side remained empty and abandoned. I used to look through the window occasionally, driven by natural childish curiosity, but there was never anything interesting to see. Just an empty, silent, lifeless space with furniture covered in dusty white sheets and curtains that rarely moved. But all that changed drastically on an apparently ordinary autumn day, when someone finally appeared in that window that had remained deserted for so long. It was a girl. She seemed to be about my age, maybe a year older or younger. It was hard to be absolutely sure from the distance. What caught my attention most about her was her dark hair tied in a neat ponytail, and especially a vibrant yellow sweater she was wearing. That yellow color was so intense that it practically glowed even through the dusty window, standing out against the gloomy interior of that old room. When our eyes met for the first time, she waved at me with a friendly smile on her face, and I, without thinking much, waved back enthusiastically. It was just an innocent interaction between two kids who lived close to each other, or at least that's what I thought at the time. After that first visual contact, she simply stepped out of the window's view, disappearing into some other room in the house, leaving only the empty reflection of the glass. From that day on, we developed a strangely consistent and almost ritualistic routine. Every day when I got back from school, she was there, always at the exact same time, around 3:30 in the afternoon, as if she were patiently waiting for me. It was as if she knew exactly when I would get home and positioned herself at the window specifically to see me. And always, without exception, she wore that same bright yellow sweater. I never saw her in any other clothes, which didn't seem strange to me at the time, but looking back now, I realize how deeply disturbing and unnatural that was. Over the weeks, we started developing a peculiar way of communicating through the windows that became part of my daily routine. She would draw figures on pieces of paper and hold them against the glass so I could try to guess what they were. Sometimes they were animals, other times everyday objects, and I genuinely enjoyed trying to decipher her drawings. In turn, I would show her my school assignments, and she would respond with gestures of approval or disapproval, giving a thumbs up or down. On hotter days, when the Baltimore heat made the air suffocating, I would open my window and try to talk to her, shouting simple questions across the space that separated us. But she never opened hers. Never. She would just smile gently and point to her ear, making a gesture that indicated she couldn't hear me through the thick glass. I imagined that maybe her parents were extremely strict and had rigid rules about keeping the windows closed for safety reasons or something like that. Many families in Baltimore were like that, especially in that neighborhood. One day, driven by growing curiosity about my mysterious new friend, I asked my mother about the girl who lived in the house behind ours. My mother frowned, confused, and told me that the Thompsons lived there, an elderly couple who had no children. I insisted, telling her about the girl at the window, about our daily games, about the yellow sweater she always wore. My mother thought for a moment and suggested that maybe it was a granddaughter visiting her grandparents for a while. That explanation made me a little sad because it meant that eventually she would leave and I would lose my friend. But she didn't leave. She kept appearing almost every day, always at the same precise time, and we continued our silent games for 30 minutes to an hour before she simply stepped out of sight, disappearing as if she had never been there. The consistency was impressive and, in a way, comforting to me. A few weeks later, something changed drastically. I woke up in the middle of the night, around 2 in the morning, to a strange sound. It was a soft but persistent tapping coming from the direction of my window. I got out of bed half-dazed, still sleepy, and walked to the window. To my absolute surprise, it was her. The girl was at her window, which was extremely strange because I had never seen her at any other time besides right after school. But there was something different about her this time. She wasn't smiling like she normally did. Her face was serious, almost desperate. She was pointing insistently downward to something I couldn't see from my angle and clasping her hands in a pleading position as if begging for something urgent. I didn't know what she wanted, and the whole scene started to scare me deeply. My heart started beating faster, and I felt a chill down my spine. Too scared to keep looking, I ran back to my bed and hid under the covers. The tapping continued for a few more agonizing minutes and then stopped abruptly, leaving only the heavy silence of the night. After that disturbing night, she didn't appear at the window for 3 consecutive days. I started thinking I had done something wrong by ignoring her that night, that maybe she was mad at me or disappointed. The guilt began to consume me. But then, on the 4th night, the tapping woke me up again. This time, when I looked, she was pressing both hands against the glass with force, leaving moisture marks. Her mouth was moving rapidly, as if she were saying something desperately important, but I couldn't hear anything since her window remained hermetically sealed as always. Her breath was fogging the glass in a strange way, creating a dense mist around her face. That seemed bizarre to me because it was mid-May, and the weather was warm. It didn't make sense for all that condensation. She kept repeating the same words with her mouth, and the more I watched, the more certain I was that she was saying something like, "Help me," or "I need help." Then she took a step back, moving slightly away from the glass. And that's when I saw something that made my blood run completely cold in my veins. There was a dark stain on her yellow sweater, like spilled ink or dried mud, but the texture and color suggested something much worse. The stain was spread irregularly and disturbingly across the front of the sweater. I panicked completely. I ran to my parents' room almost crying, tripping over my own feet in the dark hallway. My father jumped out of bed startled and ran with me to my room to look out the window. But when we got there, the light on the other side was completely off, and the girl was no longer visible. My parents tried to calm me down, saying it had just been a very vivid nightmare, that I was confusing dream with reality. They put me back in bed and told me to sleep, but I knew it hadn't been a dream. The next afternoon, when the girl didn't appear at the window at the usual time, I made a decision. I climbed the fence in our backyard and saw Mrs. Thompson tending to her garden. I smiled and waved, and she seemed happy to see me, even though we had never talked before. I gathered my courage and asked about the girl who stayed in the 3rd-floor room. Her smile vanished instantly from her face. She dropped the watering can she was holding and walked closer to the fence, and the abrupt way she stopped smiling scared me deeply. Mrs. Thompson asked me, with a serious voice she had never used before, how long I had been seeing this girl. I replied that it had been a few weeks. She then asked me to describe what this child looked like. I talked about the dark hair tied in a ponytail, about the yellow sweater she always wore, about how she never opened the window. When I finished describing, Mrs. Thompson turned pale and told me, with a trembling voice, to go back inside immediately. I thought I was in serious trouble. Things changed drastically after that day. I'm sure Mrs. Thompson called my mother, which made me think I was in big trouble. My parents moved my bed to the opposite wall that same night, without much explanation. They hung thick, heavy curtains over my window, the kind that completely block out the sunlight. When I asked why, they said it was to help me sleep better, but I knew something was very wrong. The next day, on the way back from school, my mother told me I couldn't play that waving game through the window anymore. When I asked why, she simply said I was too old for imaginary friends. I insisted that she wasn't imaginary, that I had seen her for entire months, that we had played together every day. My mother just repeated, with a firm and final tone, that I couldn't go to that window anymore. I was confused and genuinely hurt. No one wanted to explain anything to me. They treated me as if I had done something terribly wrong just for seeing that girl. My friend disappeared. She never appeared at the window again. My parents acted as if I had committed some grave mistake by seeing her, and I couldn't even express my feelings because I was already disobeying just by going to the window. We moved about a year later to another state. It wasn't until I was in high school that my mother finally explained everything to me, or more specifically, what Mrs. Thompson had told her that day. Apparently, the previous owners of the house had a daughter named Emily. She was 11 years old when she was hit by a car right in front of the house, in a horrible accident that happened right after school ended. On the day of the accident, she was wearing a yellow sweater. The family moved shortly after, unable to continue living in that place full of painful memories. When the Thompsons bought the house, they tried to use that 3rd-floor room, but ended up sealing the room completely after strange things kept happening inside. My mother didn't elaborate much on that part. I think she herself didn't know the details. She just said that Mrs. Thompson had always been a very spiritual person and sensitive to those things. Today, I'm 34 years old and live in a house that has no windows facing other buildings. That's no coincidence or accident. I've developed a deep phobia related to windows over the years, especially those that face other houses. Reflective surfaces also bother me a lot. I've had some dreams about that girl at the window over the years, nightmares that wake me up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night. Curiously, it's never a bad dream in the traditional sense. I never see her with that disturbing stain on her sweater like I did that last night. But she also doesn't smile in my dreams like she used to smile at me during the day. Her face remains neutral, expressionless, just watching me silently through that window that separated us. This will forever be one of those scary experiences that simply have no logical or rational explanation. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had tried to help her that night when she tapped on the window for the first time. Did she really need help? Was there something that I, a 9-year-old child, could have done? Or did my instinct to hide under the covers save me from something much worse? These questions haunt me to this day, decades later. I've never gone back to that neighborhood in Baltimore. I even avoid passing near that area when I visit Maryland. The simple idea of seeing that house again, those two windows facing each other across the narrow space between the buildings, fills me with an inexplicable dread. What disturbs me most isn't just what I saw, but what it means about the nature of reality. If that really was Emily's spirit, a girl who died tragically, why did she appear to me? Why did she choose to communicate with me specifically? And what did she want when she tapped on my window that night? These questions will never have answers, and maybe that's for the best. Some doors once opened can never be closed again. Some mysteries are safer when they remain unsolved. And some windows should remain forever covered by thick, heavy curtains, blocking not just the light, but also whatever lurks on the other side, waiting patiently for someone to look back. And if you also have a window that faces another house, maybe it's better to think twice before waving to whoever is on the other side. Because not always is the one waving back truly alive.